Welcome, everybody. This is the first episode of Who's On with Orny Adams, and the format of the show is this. I'm going to interview a guest. I have no idea who the guest is. You'll find out who the guest is at the exact time I do. And why I wanted to try this was as a comedian who's been traveling on the road for 25 years and has had to make fast friendships in every city that I end up in, I find myself talking to fascinating people. And even people that really don't have a story are fascinating. They've lived through something. And after some time, they tend to open up and tell me that story. Let's give this a try. Let's see what happens. So the premise of the show is I'm your host. My name is Orny Adams, and I do not know who the guest is. I may recognize the guest. Maybe it's somebody I've read their books, or I've seen them in movies, or TV, or in something. I may never acknowledge I know the person. I may get excited and say something. It may be somebody, I have no clue who it is, but I'm always excited to talk to people. And usually, just so you know, when I talk to people that are sort of known for something, I don't talk about that because they're usually sick of talking about that stuff. So let's give it a try. Hey, Fallon?
Yep.
Who's on with Orny Adams? So I have nothing prepared. There's no pre-interviews. There's no notes. I don't know this person's anything. How you doing, sir?
I'm good.
You're an East Coaster.
I'm a mutant, Iowa and East Coast.
Where are you now?
As we speak, I happen to be in Lower Manhattan. I'm actually right across the street from the World Trade Center Memorial, and which is, I was here pre-World Trade Center days also, so an emotional place to be, an appreciative place to be.
Yeah. Where were you on September 11th?
On September 11th, when that hit, I was in Washington, D.C. I'd driven by the Pentagon probably about 20 minutes before the plane hit the Pentagon.
Wow. What were you doing in Washington on September 11th?
My old job, I was with the FBI. I happened to be I was on my way to work. I was working a kidnapping in the Philippines at the time.
A kidnapping in the Philippines. So an American citizen?
American citizen, several American citizens in the Philippines. Bad guys like to snatch groups of people at a time, and they had taken a whole group of people out of a dive resort. And the crew people that they scooped up, there were 3 Americans.
Wow. So you worked in the FBI?
I did work for the FBI. Yes, I did.
Do you still work for the FBI?
This is kind of like to tell the truth, right? Is this to tell the truth?
No, you can lie. You can lie, Chris, but I'll catch you.
Yeah, I'm sure that you would, and I'm not good at lying. I've always been an honest dude, so when I lie, people, I don't even bother because I can't cover it up. No, I do not work for the FBI. I left several years ago.
And I imagine it's probably uncomfortable for you to be receiving the questions rather than giving them or asking them.
No, actually, I'm good with it because where my world is taking me these days, I get interviewed and asked questions an awful lot, actually. So it's and I enjoy it. I heard you say earlier, sometimes you don't ask people about what they do for a living. I've always loved what I do for a living so much I don't mind talking about it.
I assume you've written books, right, Chris?
I've written one.
And what's that book?
Never Split the Difference. Negotiating as if your life depended on it.
Is that based on a case, or is it?
Bunch of cases.
So let's get back to that kidnapping. What country was that in?
Philippines.
If I ask you specific questions about it, are you allowed to answer, or is it sort of like this?
Yeah, because I'm allowed to answer. It's one of the stories in a book, and everything that was in the book was pre-screened by the FBI. I had to have their permission. They looked at every word, so I'm allowed to talk about it. Yeah.
How many years were you in the FBI?
24.
24 years. Okay. And are there any cases that sort of make you fear for your life that somebody may come after you now?
No, there's even bad guys, mutual respect. I've never disrespected any opponent. Worked a lot of terrorism cases while I was with the Bureau, and, there was never anything personal on either side.
I get the sense you probably worked undercover.
No, I'm not an undercover guy. I give it a try for a little while, just to find out what it was. Um, Core basic difference. I said before I wasn't good at lying. The real part of being an undercover is basically everything you do is a lie, and I'm not comfortable lying, even if it's
Hmm.
for good reason.
I'm the same way. I can't lie. Like I can't. It's just not my DNA.
It's not a good
Um,
idea. It's a hard way to live.
yeah, yeah. Because one lie leads to another lie, and then that's it. One
Yeah,
time I was
I was going to say. I mean, yeah, you. That's exactly the case. You get caught up in it, and then everybody I knew in the agency. I mean, if you're employed by the agency, you get a different last name wherever you go. It's a hard life. It's a stressful thing to do.
yeah. Expand on that. What do you mean? What's so hard about it?
Well, I mean, by definition, everything you do is a lie. I had contact with a woman who retired from the CIA recently, and after she retired, it was the first time she told a whole bunch of people in her family that she was in the CIA. She'd been lying to them for years because that just went with the territory. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I mean you can't live with that. You just can't, right? It tore apart, didn't it?
Well, it when you start questioning basic values, then it's hard to not sort of lose yourself into it,
But
and that's why most undercovers, anybody that was ever an undercover, every law enforcement agency that has undercovers has a large staff of psychologists dedicated to bring those people back to the real world because lying all the time is that hard on you.
and some people never come back.
Some people never come back; they never get over it.
And then with this woman, she reveals to her family and friends that she was in the CIA. Uh, how do they take that? I mean, that level of deception.
That's an interesting question that I don't know. But she wrote a book about transitioning from the public sector to the private sector. She's helping people find jobs. So she's fine and coping. But I didn't get a chance to ask her. What did Jimmy say when you told him that you were a spy?
Yeah, because it would make you question everything about that person, and you may never trust them or bring them into your life again. And then those people aren't going to trust other people. This has this ripple effect
Yeah,
that's,
that's the downside. Yeah, so it's a tough thing to get into. Sounds sexy and fun. It's real hard psychologically.
yeah. I mean, are there any cases that you got so attached to or involved with that you're still in it?
Now, if you're like, I don't know if I said already, I was a hostage negotiator. Yeah, working a kidnapping, I was a hostage negotiator.
Mhm.
You do it long enough, it's going to go bad, and then if you paid attention to your training, you realize that that's a possibility, and then you learn or you quit. Is kind of
Yeah.
what it boils down to.
Did you ever, I'm sure, and if you're not comfortable talking about this, but was there ever a case where you couldn't save the person who was kidnapped or you couldn't
Yeah,
negotiate them?
once you climb north of double digits, something's going to go wrong because basic success rate is 93%, which is not quite 1 in 10 going bad, but close to it. And case that I was just talking about, 2 out of 3 of the Americans got killed. It was difficult for me, but one day I realized, it ain't as hard on me as it was on their actual blood relatives. I got no business feeling sorry for myself.
But did you, and that's healthy if you can really get there, but do you blame yourself at all? Like what, give us some of the details like of
Now
this.
we did it. We reviewed everything after action. We always work at it. That's the other thing too. You work as a team, which minimizes your own personal mistakes. And we decided after action that we did everything we knew how to do. So my response was that just means we don't know enough.
Mhm.
And then, as part of my career, I started collaborating with Harvard and got to know some Harvard people and have been in touch with and collaborating with them since.
Okay, so let's just discuss this case just so maybe that it'll be a good jumping off point for questions. Three people are kidnapped, right?
Well, there was about a dozen that was initially taken, 3 Americans, a bunch of Filipinos.
And what were they doing when they were kidnapped? Were they on a tour bus? Were they?
They were at a dive resort. The bad guys, a few months earlier, a rival faction, had snatched a bunch of people out of a dive resort. They figure, they're going to get people with money. If you go to a dive resort, they're hoping for Westerners. The other kidnapping, the rival faction, had scooped up a bunch of Westerners. It was like a train wreck of a case. I mean, everything that went bad could have gone bad. No hostages got killed, but that group got about 20 mil. So this group, they see this as a cash register opportunity. They're going to go hit a dive resort, hopefully get some Americans looking for Westerners. So they were at a dive resort.
Okay, so they go in there. They've got guns. They capture these people, right?
Yeah.
And then who do they reach out to and say, "We've got these prisoners"?
Well, they first of all they got to get out of there, and you got to be capable of respecting your counterparts. The bad guys had gone over 400 miles of open ocean. They were at a dive resort that nobody thought any bad guys could get to because it was so protected. So it was a heck of a raid, and they scoop up the Americans and the Filipinos. By the time they get back to their own country protected area that they control, enough time had passed that the world is starting to get notified anyway. People are aware that the dive resort has been hit.
Hmm.
They have. I don't recall whether or not they killed any of the people at the dive resort as their calling card, but they killed a few of the hostages as soon as they got to the other part of the Philippines, which was their safe zone. And then they start reaching out. I mean, most of the people they've grabbed have got cell phones, and they are looking for ransom right off the bat. So the notifications go out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then what leverage do you have when they have these people and they just want money? You don't know where they are, right?
Well, you got to graduate out of leverage and into influence.
Okay.
Leverage is old style negotiation
Yeah.
thinking. And influence is at quantum level, if you will.
Okay.
And
Well,
if they're
walk me through
talking, you
this.
got leverage.
Okay. Well, they have
Well,
to talk because they want the money, right?
yeah, there you go. I mean, it's a little bit of it's a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market. There ain't
And
that many places they're going to be able to get money from.
do they know they're dealing with the FBI?
No, no, no. Whenever we always coach behind the scenes,
Mm,
and which meant whoever the bad guys have reached out for, those people, it's their option whether or not they want to listen to us. And ideally, we win their trust, and they do listen to us.
mm, mm. So then, what are the tactics that you employ?
Well, you want to do you want to got to save the hostage,
Yeah.
and then you got to make sure the crazy thing is you got to make sure that when you pay, they come out. So, for example, in a kidnapping, if they say, "Look, I need $1 million for Orny, or we're not going to let him go," and if Orny's family says, "Okay, here's $1 million," the bad guys say, "Oh, nice, that was a down payment.
Ah,
Now we need another million." So you got to make the bad guys work, otherwise the hostage never comes out.
right. And is it all or nothing, or is it we're going to sever a hand? Or is that just in the movies?
Just in the movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every now and then an ear gets cut off, and you got to be careful. If they have multiple hostages, that means they feel that they can make an example out of somebody.
Hmm.
So you have to be cautious of that. But,
And,
there's power in deference. You got to be deferential.
and at any given time, how many hostage negotiations are the FBI involved with? Like right now, today, does this go on all the time and we just never hear about it?
On any given day, globally, there's no less than 4 Americans being held.
Because one time I was at, I don't know if you've been to Los Angeles, but we have an Irish bar called Tom Bergen's. And
Did
it's
you
a
get
real,
taken hostage there?
no, it was like the opposite. It was like this place where like at the end of the night, just the salt of the earth would end up. I'd go after my shows. And I ended up talking to the former chief of police for Los Angeles. And he said to me, and I'm curious if you've ever had a similar feeling. He said to me, if you really knew what was going on in this city, you'd be scared to death. He said it just isn't reported. Crime just happens. They go to Mexico. Do you feel that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know, you'd be scared to death. There's a lot of bad stuff that goes on. You got a city the size of Los Angeles. Of course, there's going to be small pockets of really nasty things going on. And but at the end of the day, the bad guys are businessmen, and they want to continue doing business, which means they're generally careful who the victims are, and they're conscious of government regulation, also known as law enforcement. And that's never good for business.
Mm.
So there's certain friend of mine is Molly Bloom. Molly Bloom is a really interesting person, and she wrote a book and a movie star on her life called Molly's Game.
Yeah.
She ran a poker game in L.A. She ran a poker game in New York,
Hmm.
and you're waving a red flag at a bull if you're running a poker game in New York. You're gonna organized crime's gonna show up because the gambling is their industry.
Hmm.
And then she was pretty good for a while, but then she got so close to the rules that they felt like that she owed them money. So if you got to understand what the bad guys, what rules they play by, and what they're going to expect.
All right.
By the way, I highly recommend both the book and the movie. And Molly's a good person. I think the world over.
Yeah, I saw that movie. I thought it was great. I thought it was really great. Was she happy with the way that movie came out?
Yeah, maybe she'd be a guest on your show sometime. She got a fascinating story about how she got um, Sorkin to write it too.
Oh, really? Well, definitely talk to Fallon. I'd love if she popped in and surprised me, and I probably wouldn't recognize her, so it would be interesting. Were you friends with her before? Because this is a crime what she was doing, right? Running these games.
Yeah, no. We both spoke at a conference a couple years ago, and I wasn't there at the same time she was, but I saw, and then I Molly's Game. What is that? And I watched the movie, and then bought the book, and she's got great insight into human nature. Then I can't remember exactly how we originally met, maybe, but we got introduced and we hit it off, and I'm a big fan of hers since.
24 years in the FBI. What I'm trying to get at is what do you know? What have you learned that I don't know, not having had your experiences? Because you've seen what we would say you've seen some shit. What do you know that you look at a guy like me and you say this he doesn't know and he needs to know?
Either that or some stuff that you wonder might be true that the media, the social world probably doesn't want you to understand. I mean, people are people regardless. Like I'm working kidnappings. You drop me in a country, any country in the world, I got to stand up a response to try to get the hostage out, and I got to play by the local rules. Which means I'm not in places where there's democracy. I'm not in places where any of our rules apply.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody there is the same as us. All they really want is they want a decent shot at life. They want a decent place for their kids to grow up. They want a decent future for them and their family. And they don't care what kind of government they have. So as Americans, we're constantly trying to, we're telling people in the Middle East, you should have a different kind of government. We this all this business in Afghanistan. We come in and we can bomb the hell out of you, but we can't help you build your society, except if you want us to tell you what kind of government you want. When in fact, everybody over there is got pretty much the same hopes and dreams for a better life that we do.
Right.
And this idea that there's these cultural differences, at the end of the day, everybody's a human being. And they kind of want the same things regardless. And if you look at everybody, whether they're from China, whether they're from India, whether they're from Afghanistan, at the underneath it all, we're all pretty much the same, and it becomes a lot easier to get along.
I mean, that's the fundamental basis of my stand-up comedy is that we're all the same. And I use my comedy to sort of bring people together rather than
true.
divide. So if you ever see my comedy or you ever see me live, you'll see this group of people, this group, and these groups of people don't really interact that often. But 10 minutes into the show, they're looking around going, we're all laughing, we're all the same.
Universal laughter.
Yeah, so I get that. But like when I read Gavin DeBecker's book, The Gift of Fear, and, he discusses if you feel something, then, like if something in your gut says cross the street.
Yeah, amen.
you're making millions of calculations subconsciously that you don't even realize. Maybe someone's coming at you and you saw them on TV and they were wanted for something. Maybe whatever it is, cross the street. And I'm wondering if there's something that the FBI taught you with all these negotiations in all these countries that you could share.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't be afraid of being afraid is what I used to tell people because, people would ask how to avoid getting kidnapped. Like, don't be afraid to be afraid. Getting kidnapped is no different than getting mugged. If you got a gut instinct that something is wrong, you should get out of there. I would agree with Gavin DeBecker's assessment. Now, if you do something like crossing the street, also take a look at the person that you got away from and then take a legitimate assessment whether it was good radar or maybe your prejudices were getting in the way. And so, all right, be willing to be educated. Be smarter today than you were yesterday.
Right.
Just don't stop learning, but don't be afraid to be afraid.
Yeah, and act on that. I have two quick questions. One, knowing what you know, are there any countries in the world you would not travel to?
Mexico.
Mexico. That was the first.
Yeah. Principally is a bounty on FBI agents in Mexico. Like a lot of people can go down there just fine. The downside is when things go sideways in Mexico, there is no recourse. Even if you're in a resort that's protected and left alone, once things start going downhill in Mexico, if you can't get out, there's no help, there's no recourse. It's a tough place to have things go bad.
Our government can't go in there and grab you or help you or.
After the fact, things have already started to go down by the time Uncle Sam gets involved.
Yeah. Here's the other question. In the last couple of years, it feels like trust in the FBI has sort of waned as an institution. There seems to be some misinformation out there. Does that upset you?
I'd been out long enough that I started checking back with my buddies and how they were handling it. And actually, a very close friend of mine, his son is a current agent and a street guy. And all the street guys were like, look, this is media, political nonsense. This is a cat fight in Washington, D.C. We're just going to get about our business and continue to do our job. And by and large, the American people have, for good reason, have kept their faith in the FBI. And the FBI hasn't slowed down. They're still throwing bad guys in jail. And when politicians start catfighting in Washington, D.C., the Bureau, by and large, just ignores it.
You know what happens to me is I meet all these interesting people. I met somebody, I keep thinking, should I bring it up? Shouldn't I bring it up? But he was, I'll be as ambiguous as possible, but I was actually with the fireside people at the Soho House, and they ran into somebody they knew who happened to have been involved with something in another country and was accused of kidnapping. And fascinating story and a fascinating life, and he's very open about it. I plan to have him on this or on my podcast, but I don't want to give away too much. But we exchanged numbers and we started texting, and I thought I just ended up in another FBI file. I always think every time I meet these people that have these stories, and I find it fascinating, and I keep in touch with them. I always think I'm in another file. And Gavin told me once, he said, you're probably in files you didn't even realize. You could be eating at a restaurant and you're just eating and they're surveying somebody, and now they start following you thinking you might be attached to them.
Yeah, well, and then maybe they get into one of your shows for free, right? Because they're following.
Yeah. I mean, I always have this fantasy, this savior fantasy that somehow I'm involved with solving something because this bad person was a fan of mine and I got it's a weird fantasy to have, but I've had it for years.
That ain't a bad fantasy. You're on the side of the good guys.
I try to be.
By the way, I wish to hell I was working on a bourbon. As soon as you keep taking a sip out of whatever that is,
that's water. But if you want bourbon, I got right here. I got right here. Whatever you want. Yeah, you can. We should have. There should be like an official cocktail for this show when we start drinking.
Yeah, that'd be good.
What's the one question people ask you all the time you're sick of answering?
I don't know if there's any question I'm sick of answering. I mean, no, yeah, I tell you the one. I tell you one. My son is very involved in my company now. He gets interviewed a fair amount as well. And a question that he hates is, "What was it like growing up? Son of so and so's famous hostage negotiator. Must have been great." He's like, "Great. The guy was never at home. He was always gone. He's out saving the world. Me and mom were at home. I had to cut the grass. Yeah, he was always gone."
So you call yourself a famous negotiator. What are you known for? What's your most famous? Where does your notoriety come from? And excuse
Well,
me for not knowing.
it's not from the hostage negotiations. I mean, the book Never Split the Difference is done pretty well. It happens to be the best-selling business negotiation book on Amazon.
Oh,
It has been for nearly 5 years.
I'm
And
going to
so,
read it.
in a narrow part of the world, like I got a master class, I get stopped occasionally because people have seen me in master class. The master class is done pretty well, teaching people about negotiation. So, hostage negotiators are relatively obscure people, so I don't have to get that much notoriety, for me to be at the top of the heap.
So do you get contacted now by the FBI? Like, hey, we're working on this thing and we can't crack it.
Now, the water rushes in quickly after you walk out the door.
Wait, tell me about your company. What's your company?
The Black Swan Group, we coach people how to be better negotiators. I got a whole team of superstar coaches, and we teach you how to use our stuff in everyday life. So actually, almost immediately after I got out of the bureau, my son and I started teaching this stuff. I mean, I was technically the professor, but my son and I started teaching this stuff at Georgetown University, and that was cool. We got a kick out of it. People like the skills. Most people want to win a negotiation without making the other side lose. Those are two different things. And we teach people how to win negotiations without making the other side lose. Because if you make them lose, they're going to be your enemy, and nobody needs enemies. So it's always been fun doing this in business and personal life since I left the government.
How often do people in business feel like they won, but they really lost in a negotiation?
Um, if they're bragging about their victory, there's two things you can count on. They lost long term. And when you really find people who brag about a negotiation, like, I had them over a barrel, I had all this leverage, they only make a deal like that every few years. They don't, because nobody wants to deal with them again.
Right.
Yesterday, I had a pleasure talking to Mark Cuban on here on Fireside, and Cuban talked about having integrity in negotiations and doing business over and over and over with people. And the more you had a negotiation where they felt like it was a collaboration, he talked about your interests being intertwined. He said then your deals accelerate. Now, of course, every now and then I'm sure that Mark has to beat somebody, but he knows that's a bad idea because you make an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how you make deals accelerate because people want to continue to deal with you, and that's one of the critical issues.
Yeah. All right, Isidro, thank you so much, Dave.
Can I make one more quick comment? Chris, yesterday I heard that with Mark Cuban. I think you got to throw a masterclass on listening because you're an awesome listener and a lot of people could learn off that. But Orny, this is a great idea. The fact that you didn't know Chris and the beginning of this show was so awesome. Whoever thought of it, it's a great idea. So this is cool.
Orny's idea.
This was cool. Thank you.
And let me throw out an ad for Orny because I really became aware of him because of Fallon. I started looking at your videos on YouTube. Hysterical stuff, man. And you are one of the funniest guys out there. I look forward to the opportunity to get to see you do a show. I think you are ridiculously funny. Really funny guy.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. That means a lot. Let's bring Kate on. Kate, what do you have to say? Come on up. Unmute yourself. Ask Chris a question. Chris, you have a couple of minutes. You guys want to stick around and ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
All right. Kate, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hey.
Am I unmuted?
You are. I can. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Chris, I was hoping you could kind of dispel or explain something for me. So I, and I think many others, have been under the notion that the FBI operates on sovereign soil, whereas the CIA works for internationally. But when I hear you talk about hostage negotiations overseas, if you can you talk a little bit about the international role of the FBI and kind of what that crossover looks like between the agencies?
Sure.
And
Well,
Kate, this is quickly. This is exactly the question I probably would have asked had I been able to prep for this interview. Excellent question.
had you had a chance to talk,
were
right?
Great. Your questions were great, Orny.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, so you got the basic parameters down correct now, but it would be to the bad guy's interest if the FBI stopped at our shores. So the way that because crime is international, it was international before the internet came along, and God knows it's international now. So what happens as soon as as soon as an on-duty FBI agent steps foot outside the U.S., we are a private citizen like everybody else. We got no authority. We don't bring any of the law enforcement oomph with us technically. It's all collaboration. All collaboration. I could go to a country and they could say, we don't want you. And I got to turn around and go back. I had to have official permission from the local government and all of the U.S. government liaisons before I could ever set foot in a country. I'd have to have the ambassador's permission to be there. The ambassador would get permission from his counterparts in the local government. And I am only a private citizen. And they are looking only to cooperate. Like if I want something, they don't want to give it, they don't want to do it. That's too bad. It's all cooperation and charm, if you will. You get a lot farther being nice than you get demanding. So we got to operate internationally because crime's international, but we got no authority outside the United States.
Do you guys butt heads a lot?
You can, and in my early days traveling internationally, I bumped heads plenty, and I lost every single time. And I may be a slow learner, but I learn. Mm-hmm. So I would learn that I could only get where I wanted to be by asking and never by telling.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Kate? Guess so. Guess she muted. Anybody else question? We got one more.
A couple more here.
All right. What do we got, Fallon? Throw anybody at us. We're fast. This is what happens when the Yankees and the Red Sox come together.
Corey wanted to ask his question.
Okay, Corey. Welcome back, Corey.
And we could talk Super Bowls too if you wanted to.
We have quite a few. We used to have a quarterback. And then
what's your record against the Giants in the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, let me just put it this way. Victory doesn't taste good if you win all the time. You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you a funny story, Chris. I was in Seattle the month after the Patriots beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. And in the audience were 3 members of the Seahawks. And I was on stage and somebody yelled, "Where are you from?" And I thought, oh my God, I can't say where I'm from. So I said, what does it matter? I go, we're all one people. It's one world. We're all the same. And I'm like,
we are the world.
Yeah. Corey, what's
so you never gave it up, huh?
No, but I mean, if you can't tell, I'm Northeast to the bone. You know what I mean? I'm an East Coaster.
You pronounce your R's.
Not really. When I'm tired, I slip and I forget about them. And there's some words I can't.
What do you drive to work?
An automobile.
Oh, you didn't say car.
No, Chris. I'm not falling for your easy FBI bullshit. You know. Corey, what's that question? That's so important that Corey had to come back on stage. What is it?
That's right. So Chris, I've reached out to you in your DMs multiple times, and I really, really, really want to have you on my podcast. Can you tell me how to do that?
Email info@blackswanltd.com.
Can I slide one more in?
Well, look. If you got to learn the Black Swan method, You got to say, is it a ridiculous idea if I slide one more in?
Oh, well, I thought if it's free, I'll take 3.
If it's free, I'll take 3. That's it. That's an old FBI saying.
So my question is, I try to use the no. I try to draw out the no in a text conversation, and I'm struggling with it. Now I've taken the master class probably 5 times, no exaggeration, and I've probably listened to the book 10 times, no exaggeration, and I can't seem to crack it. And maybe it's just practice. That's my question.
It's a Karate Kid stuff. Wax on, wax off. You got to do like the master says. We'll do this one, and then before Orny falls asleep.
Yeah,
tell me a question that you
what happened
can't.
to my show? What's this?
This is we got a negotiation consultant.
Listen, if I was holding Corey hostage, I would have killed him already. I'm taking Corey off the stage. You answer that question. Corey's gone. I'm about to kick him. This is how do I kick
off
people?
my show.
I've never been kicked. Listen, let's talk about some serious stuff. Do you want to answer that question for Corey? Because I don't want him to, be upset. But what?
Well, I don't know what
He's
whatever the
stalking
question
you.
is.
How do we deal with stalkers, Chris? That's the real answer. The real question.
It depends upon whether or not they buy. Like if they're buying in a nice steakhouse, then you hang out with them.
Okay, hang out. Okay, all right. That makes sense. But Corey has some very specific questions. Sounds like you should go on his podcast and answers.
There you go. Then he'd have me hostage for at least an hour, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would. Hey, he means well. There's Fallon's vicious laugh. Who else has the guts to come up on stage right now?
All right, let's go with Patrick.
Who's flushing their toilet?
Hi, Chris.
What kind of show is this?
I saw Chris yesterday saw him yesterday. It's pretty ironic.
Mark Cuban.
Yeah, that's right. Good to see you again. Anyway, as far as negotiation, I was in the retail automotive industry for 30 years. Started as a salesman, worked my way up, eventually was partners with my dad. And I'm wondering, we had a time, we work on a 30-day cycle in the car business. So we had like a time deadline. How do you, as a negotiator, like what you did, we used to.
I'm going to do a master class on how to ask questions.
How to get to the
Do you
point.
think it's the building rapport part when you don't know how much time you have with that person or situation?
I'm going to answer this too. You can build rapport in half a second. You can build rapport before you're in 12 inches away from that person. You have to make an instant connection. This I know from doing stand-up comedy. I can connect with anybody instantly.
That's the greet, the first impression. But then you got the rapport to find out how you're going to get through to the guy.
You let that person lead. That person tells you how much time they want to spend.
To sell the car or save the situation that you're negotiating.
No, I got to tell you something. I'm 1,000% with Orny. Orny's establishing rapport. He's making a connection with human beings right off the bat. Tone of voice, demeanor, facial expressions, vulnerability. The line, I made all my worst decisions on high tea. I mean, this dude is hysterical. You got to check out his stand-up comedy.
Thanks, Chris. I think a lot of people overstay their welcome. The sale is done. When it's done, go right into it, get the business done, and get out. People keep talking. Like if you're talking to someone and you're trying to sell the car, you should be able to know exactly when that sale is going to go through. At that point, you shut up and you finish the sale.
Agreed.
Orny, how many nights a week you on a stage?
I can be on stage any night I want. Right now, at this point in my life, I'm limiting to like 2 or 3, and then I go on the road. But what made you ask that question?
You got to stay sharp, man.
Yeah.
I know you're doing stuff to stay sharp.
Yeah, I love it. It's my passion.
Keeps you alive, right?
Yep. The most important thing, because I've had money and I've not had money, is having something that you love, and that's why I really think whether it's a hobby or work or whatever, I think that's my biggest fear with what's going on in the world right now. When we've all been inside, and some people haven't had to work, it's like, where do you find your passion from? I think that's so important to be alive.
Amen. Amen.
Let's take one more and then let's wrap this up. Fallon,
All
what
right,
do we
we got Tage on stage. Hopefully I said that right.
Tage, what's up?
You did. Thanks, Fallon. Orny, you're a hilarious man. Awesome. Chris, big fan. We've exchanged commentary on Instagram and LinkedIn a bunch. Question for you would be, empathy gets thrown around so much. People don't get empathy or they're not empathetic. How would you give someone a tip on how to be a better negotiator by actually building on empathy if you naturally don't get it? That's a question I get asked a lot. Curious to know what you think.
Yeah, it's just practice. Everything is learned. So if you want to get good at empathy, just a couple times say, before I disagree with you, here's what I think your thinking is. And until they tell you that you got it right, you can't go on. Kind of that simple.
How about this, Chris? Because I read a book called The Sociopath Next Door. And the author claims that 1 in 25 people are sociopathic. They lack empathy. They just biologically do not.
No. That's a definition of empathy, which I would not agree on that definition to start with. Now, sociopaths lack guilt and they lack compassion. And you start drawing a distinction on the definitions of those words, then maybe they do, maybe they don't. It depends upon how you define empathy.
Well, they can't feel for others. So, I mean, in a sense, if you don't feel guilt, you're not empathetic. You're not there. You're not like when this interview is over, I'll spend the next 12 hours thinking, I hope Chris wasn't disappointed. I hope he enjoyed it. I hope that Fallon and the team don't think I suck now. I hope, I'll feel it for 12 hours, probably longer. I just don't want to admit it. But sociopaths don't feel that. They don't give a shit. They'll go, I don't care. Chris was on my show and I got everything I needed from him.
Now, all right, so let's go with Goleman. Goleman splits empathy, slices and dices it several different ways. One of those that you're referring to is what he calls emotional empathy, when people are sharing feelings. You also have another definition of empathy called cognitive empathy, which is where I'm just mentally aware of how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And he happens to also say that the very best people at that are sociopaths because their own feelings about how you should feel doesn't get in their way. They're great at picking up how you are feeling, and the feeding of that back to you creates a bond from you to them, which they've discovered and want to exploit. So again, it depends upon how you define empathy, whether or not it's the awareness of emotions or the feeling of those emotions. And sociopaths are remarkably good at being aware of our emotions.
Oh, they know who has empathy. Unfortunately, we don't know who lacks that sort of has that sociopathic gene that lacks the empathy or just doesn't feel guilty. That's the scary thing.
Let's draw the distinction between empathy and compassion.
Okay. How do you ever negotiate with somebody and you just think this person's not even human? I can't get through to this person.
What do you think the definition of being a hostage negotiator is?
Well, I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I didn't even know who my guest was until
but I mean, now that you do, you figure that we're negotiating with nurses and nuns that are taking hostages. Come on.
Well, some people, they make a mistake. They're on a good path, and then they go into a kidnapping. Yeah.
Well, so, is there some late night with too much drinking in your past that this resonates with?
Well, listen, I'll tell the story if you're willing to tell your story. I'm sure there's one story you've never told before. What is that? That would be fascinating to the people listening and watching right now.
That I don't know. Did you just ask me what's the one thing that you can't remember that you want to say now?
No, it's the one thing you do remember, but you'd rather not say.
Oh, wow. See, I got to tell you something. There, if you can trigger it out of me, there really isn't. Which is another reason why, as a side note for the masterclass, they got a story out of me that I had never told before. I did not expect it. Yeah, but
You ever tell? I got to tell you. That's your way of letting your brain catch up. I got to tell you. I got to
tell you. Let me see. Was it the time? There was this time I was surrounded by terrorists to the left of me, Terrorists to the right of me.
Is this true?
No, of course not.
What? Did you ever break the law as an FBI
Sure I did.
agent? All right,
As an
tell me
FBI agent?
Yeah.
No, not as an FBI agent.
You
FBI agents are Boy Scouts.
They are?
We are Boy Scouts. We were and we are. The CIA always accused us of being Boy Scouts, and we were like, yeah, what's your point?
So there was never a time that you sort of bent the rules in order to be successful on a mission?
I bent administrative rules left and right. Those aren't real rules. That's bullshit that bureaucrats make up to hold people back. Did I ever bend the law? No.
But the CIA is, right?
As soon as you start lying about everything you do, a lot of other things start falling away.
You're saying that they do that?
I told you. Well, I mean, you start with by lying about your name wherever you go, because you're undercover wherever you go. I mean, even when I worked in D.C. with people that were identified as CIA agents that were working with me on the National Security Council and other places, I knew their last name wasn't their real last name.
Can I trust anybody?
Me.
Besides you.
And Fallon. You can trust Fallon.
No, in every
and Fallon's husband, Greg, you can trust him. I like him a lot. He's a good guy.
I'm gonna ask you a serious question, and this is for me. This is serious.
A comedian is going to ask a serious question.
I haven't been funny once on this podcast. This is the least funny project I've ever done.
I've been trying to carry it.
This is like I try to. If you see me on stage, it's very. I tend to think very.
It's like Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and Mark Wahlberg's being funnier than Will Ferrell, right?
Yeah, everybody's funnier than me on this. I'm the least funny. We got people coming on asking questions, and they're funnier than me. And at this point in my life, I'm fine with it, because most comics have a real serious side to them. But also, most comics don't trust people because we've been burned so many times and lied to. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, who can you trust? Because the people that get closest to you the fastest, there was the Boston accent. They're the con artists. They're the people who know how to manipulate, even people like me. So how do I?
You're in the entertainment business, and that percentage is very high to begin with too. Because a truly talented artist such as yourself, the entertainment business thinks you guys are going to burn out quickly. So they've learned the hard way that they got to exploit it. So somebody like you who's decent and clearly who has lasted and is a talent that has stood the test of time, you're a unicorn as far as they're concerned. So, from their perspective, they don't expect guys like you to last, and yet you do.
But how about like in our personal lives? When we meet people,
listen to your gut. Be willing to be wrong. You got good radar. If you are giving people the benefit of the doubt when your gut instinct tells you not to. Listen to your gut. Be willing to be wrong. It's just like being afraid, and then be willing to be educated by the experience.
Yeah. All right.
And always trust a hostage negotiator. Trust me, I'm a hostage negotiator.
It's good. I'm now glad that I have now I'm thinking I kind of want one of my friends to be kidnapped, because now I can come in and say, I got the guy.
I will coach you. You'll get him out, and he'll owe you his life.
I think this is the show. It's the comedian with the FBI hostage negotiator. I just see it. It's a buddy film. It's a buddy series. And we save people. But how great
we need to get a terrorist on the other. So if somebody in the audience is actually a terrorist, we can bring them up on stage.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to encourage all my friends to go to Mexico. Everybody I know, I'm going to say, listen, go to Mexico. It's cheap now. And maybe, if we're lucky, one of them gets kidnapped.
Walk around with $100 bills sticking out of your pocket.
Yes, we give them a shirt. They don't know on the back it says "Kidnap me, I'm loaded." It has it has their Venmo thing that they can request money from. And then you and I come in, we save it. I'm thinking this is a lot of money because we'll sell the rights to the film. And let me tell you something: Cuban and Fallon, they'll try and get in, but they don't own any of it. because I did it on my fireside chat.
That's right. It's content. Creator owns the content, right?
Plug everything, Chris, because I didn't talk to you before this. So plug your website, plug your masterclass, plug everything.
Look, blackswanltd.com.
There it is.
Wherever you are in your negotiation journey, we got free stuff to help you move along. When you're making a lot of money, we got expensive stuff to take you to the next level. We'll help you.
Great. And I'm going to read your book. I'll probably get a hard copy because I'm older, and then I'll have you sign it when I see you. And I'll probably have a lot of questions like Corey.
I'll okay. All right.
And I'm going to start a masterclass on how to ask questions.
Yeah.
So when people pop on the show, it's very
concise, right?
Yeah. I want to thank.
This is fun, man.
Yeah, you're great, and I'm glad you were my first guest. And I hope we keep in touch. I hope we can exchange information through Fallon. I feel like that would be a secure line of communication.
We'll go to a steakhouse together and have some scotch. We'll do something fancy.
I love it. Yeah, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank everybody that participated on the show today. I know I made fun of some of you. I will feel guilty about that later because I'm not 1 in 25. I'm not sociopathic.
I won't care.
You won't care. That's great. And I encourage everyone to tune in. We're going to do this again next week. Fallon, do we have another guest lined up yet?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we're making it happen.
And if anybody wants to be a guest on this show, please reach out. I have another podcast that's mildly funnier than this called What's Wrong with Orny Adams. You can get that on any place, any platform you can get podcasts. And my stand-up. Come see me. And I'm on Instagram if you want to communicate. Because Fallon, why can't we email Chris and I through the app right now? This
isn't an email app.
Okay.
How dare you? How dare you? Do you hear her tone of voice when she answered you? How dare you?
That's the Fallon bot. That's not the real Fallon. The real Fallon. No, she's on like a Zoom and another. She's on a private jet somewhere. This is Fallon bot.
I'm on a private jet. No, I'm an entrepreneur.
We did a test run yesterday, 2 days ago, and I said, "This is the worst dating app I've ever been on. This is horrible. We can't we're not allowed to contact each other." So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Who's On with Orny Adams. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Created live on Fireside.